Court's going to be coming out. Please double check all electronic devices. Make sure they're powered off. Court, all rise. Court 906 is now open. The Honorable Judge Sanders presiding. Please be seated.
For the record before the court is a matter of Commonwealth v. Rachelle Bond on docket 15-11293. Defendant is present in court. Your Honor, this matter appears before you for sentencing. Will the parties please identify yourselves for the record?
Good morning, Your Honor. Assistant District Attorney David Deacon for the Commonwealth.
Assistant District Attorney Hella Saxon for the Commonwealth.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Janice Basil on behalf of Rachelle Bond, who is seated next to me. So, Ms. Bond entered a plea of guilty. What date was that, Ms. Basil, do you recall? February 10th. And I went through a full colloquy at that time explaining to her the rights that she was giving up. I heard the recommendation of the prosecutor. I also indicated at that last hearing that I would be accepting that recommendation since, as it was made clear to me, she was willing to plead guilty only on that condition. So the Commonwealth is now asking that I impose the sentence that was stated on that last date of February 10th, Mr. Deacon?
Yes, Your Honor. That's the Commonwealth's request.
And can you, again, remind me for the record what that recommendation was?
The recommendation was that as to count one, which is accessory after the fact to murder, that the defendant would be sentenced to time served upon the completion and entry of a verdict in the case against Commonwealth against Michael McCarthy. The Commonwealth's further recommendation was that Ms. Bond be sentenced to 2 years probationary period to be served from and after the committed time, and there was a discussion at that time of special conditions of probation to be negotiated further. The Commonwealth submitted at the last sentencing date 2 weeks ago proposed conditions of probation, which I believe now, after speaking with sister counsel, are agreed upon.
Okay, and those can you just state for the record what those conditions are?
Yes, Your Honor.
And this is with respect to the second charge of larceny?
That's correct, Your Honor.
And is it larceny over $250?
It is larceny over $250, Your Honor.
Okay.
And the proposed conditions of probation are that the defendant is to undergo a full psychiatric evaluation that includes a substance abuse component by a clinician selected and or approved by the probation department, and comply with any recommendations resulting from that evaluation. These recommendations may include inpatient and or outpatient substance abuse treatment. Second condition, the defendant is to refrain from using alcohol and or any illegal substances, and will submit to random urine screens to verify and enforce compliance. Third, the defendant is not to reside with anyone using illegal substances.
So, Ms. Basil, you're in agreement with those conditions of probation? Yes, I am, Your Honor. In terms of the evaluation, I had provided a name to probation. There was a forensic psychiatrist that I had worked with in the case prior to the change of plea. She's reviewed all of my client's records. She's met with her multiple times, and I'm hoping that she can be the one to do the evaluation. It's Dr. Julia Reed. Okay, so you've talked to probation about that, and to the extent any releases are needed for probation to access information Dr. Reed compiled, those releases are going to be executed, so that can happen? Is that
Sure.
Okay.
No problem.
Okay. I'm sorry.
The other issue, Your Honor, is the question of probation fees. And I know that I am asking to waive the probation fees. I know that they can be made up by community service, but the fact is my client is going to go into a rehabilitation program. And what I really want her to focus on is her sobriety, which will be a significant period of time. Frankly, the last thing I want her to do is to be working off probation funds, picking up trash, and being surrounded by people who can become just a conduit for further substance abuse. So she has absolutely nothing. And I am asking the court to consider waiving the fees.
And also waiving any requirement of community service, at least for the time she's in treatment?
For the time she's in treatment, and as I understand it, she'll be in intensive treatment, and then usually there's a level of step down, and I can't predict that right now, but I would ask that they be waived until at least she is sort of out of a program and that she isn't living somewhere else.
That was going to be the Commonwealth's position, Your Honor, is I think it would be appropriate to waive them while she's in treatment, inpatient treatment. The
And
Commonwealth-
outpatient, any follow-up outpatient as well?
I think if she's in outpatient treatment, the Commonwealth's position would be that she could then either pay or perform community service, probably perform community service given her indigency. But I would defer to the court on the precise nature of it, but certainly while she's in inpatient treatment, I think it's certainly reasonable not to require her to do community service. After that, though, I think it's reasonable to require that she do it.
Okay, so I will adopt the recommendation that the supervision fees are waived. In the alternative, community service will be performed, but no requirement of community service as long as Ms. Bond is receiving treatment, whether that's outpatient or inpatient. And I'll leave it to probation to decide at what point, if any, during this 2-year period, she can then make up or start paying the fees by way of community service. Okay. Is there any other matters I need to do other than have the clerk impose the sentence?
Yes, Your Honor. Our request in terms of the sentence, since it's time served in probation, is that it be stayed until Friday morning, and that her release would be from the South Bay Correction Center. We have a bed for her. It's available on Friday. She herself does not want to be released without anywhere to go and wants to go directly from jail to a program. We all agree, and the Commonwealth agrees as well, that that would be the best way to accomplish this.
Okay. Is there anything that I need to order or that needs to be done with regard to where she's going to be released from? Or is that, I'll leave that to the parties in the prison to figure out?
We can craft the mid, I think, to
Okay.
reflect that.
Okay. Okay. So I would do that, stay the execution until Friday, so that she can, Ms. Bond can go directly from South Bay to a bed that has been located at this point. That's why we deferred the sentence the last time. And the clerk can impose the sentence with the conditions that have been specified.
Rachelle Bond, the court having previously accepted your change of plea with respect to indictment 2015-11293, offense 001, charging accessory after the fact to murder. The court, in consideration of this offense, orders you committed to the Suffolk County House of Correction at South Bay for a period of 665 days. Court orders that time deemed served. The court having previously accepted your change of plea on indictment 2015-11293, offense 002, charging larceny over $250. The court, in consideration, places you on probation for a period of 2 years to commence from and after the sentence imposed on offense 001. You are subject to the following special terms and conditions of probation. You are to undergo a full psychiatric evaluation that includes a substance abuse component by a clinician selected and or approved by the probation department and comply with any recommendations resulting from that evaluation. These recommendations may include inpatient and or outpatient substance abuse treatment. You are to refrain from using alcohol and or any illegal substances and will submit to random urine screens to verify and enforce compliance. You are to not to reside with anyone using illegal substances. Do you assent to those conditions?
Yes, sir.
Court imposes a $90 victim witness fee. The $65 monthly probation supervision fee is waived. Any community service alternative is waived while you are in any in or outpatient treatment. You are notified of an obligation to provide a DNA sample and to comply with any rules and regulations established by the Director of the Massachusetts State Police Crime Lab. And the court orders the execution of the sentence stayed until Friday, July 14th. You're hereby remanded to the custody of the sheriff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All rise. This court stands in a recess.
Thank you.
you.
I just realized I always have trouble with her putting it, so I just put mine as you like, so I'm fine. Because she doesn't, not as I need to write up the contract. Oh, okay. So I noticed it's such a problem, so this was like, you weren't.
All right, guys. Let me hold that for you, Mike.
Photoshop.
Let's see if you...
Are we waiting for anybody out there?
Whenever you guys are ready, you can just...
Dan, it's finally over, I guess. What's your thoughts? A long process. We started as a global mystery, and now it's wrapped up. And
Sure.
Everyone's being held accountable, I guess, for
Right,
their
right.
actions.
Well, again, I just I start off as I have done in the past, thanking our Massachusetts State Police Detective Units assigned to my office, Lieutenant Trooper Bob Murphy and Trooper Dan Herman, also David Deacon and Hella Sash, the Assistant District Attorneys who were assigned to this case from the beginning, who worked with the troopers together tirelessly over a period of years to bring us to this point. This was one of the most tragic cases that I've dealt with in my career as the district attorney. Whenever we lose any citizen in Suffolk County to homicide, it's a terrible loss and a terrible tragedy. It's magnified, however, exponentially when you're dealing with small children. And in this case, we have a little girl, not even quite 3 years old, and it just struck all of us in the office how terribly tragic this would ultimately be. So I want to thank them for their hard work in bringing us to this point, holding Michael McCarthy accountable for his actions, and also holding Rachelle Bond accountable for her actions as well.
On that, Dan, a lot of people, and there's been a lot of talk on social media, on Facebook, on TV and newspaper websites, if people talk to people in the street, a lot of people are very upset that Rachelle Bond is effectively now walking away from this. A lot of people say you made a deal with the devil. Your thoughts on that, and kind of address that. What
Well,
people may say the
yeah.
Suffolk DA's office
Yeah.
did the wrong thing.
First of all, you know, we don't characterize our witnesses, you know, and tarnish their reputations and so forth by calling them devils, for example. I mean, that's nothing that, you know, we would ever do. What we do is we take a set of facts, we find the facts, we analyze those facts, we test those facts against other facts to determine, as best as we are humanly capable of doing, what happened here. And when we did that, the evidence suggested to us that the homicide was committed by Michael McCarthy, and that Rachelle Bond was likely present shortly after the homicide occurred and was complicit in the aftermath of that homicide to some degree, and then also collected benefits for the child after her death. we would never enter into a cooperation agreement with any potential witness without doing a complete and a full and a thorough investigation. That's exactly what we did here. Her proffer of information, what we expected she would testify to, was also corroborated by other independent evidence. When she gave her statement, she said things in that statement that we were later able to corroborate as true. So the evidence led us to the conclusion that Rachelle Bond was culpable for being an accessory after the fact and having committed larceny. And it's then and only then that we entered into a cooperation agreement.
Do you believe you could have obtained the conviction of Michael McCarthy without her cooperation?
There would have been no prosecution of Michael McCarthy without the cooperation agreement that we made with Rachelle Bond to secure her testimony. And again, we wouldn't make that sort of an agreement with any witness unless we were satisfied to the best of our abilities that the evidence that she was going to, the testimony that she would offer would be truthful. And we concluded that the evidence suggested that she was not the killer, that Michael McCarthy had committed the homicide, and that's why we entered into the agreement.
Could you elaborate a little bit more on that? You could not have made this prosecution without her testimony because what?
It would have been insufficient to even get the case to a jury. So without Rachelle Bond's testimony about what happened in the apartment on that fateful night, we would not have been able to get to the jury with that question. I mean, the evidence, it has to be a quantum of proof that even gets us to a point where a jury can analyze the evidence. We would not have gotten to that point. So, look, I have been approached by citizens in Suffolk County in the last several months who have asked me that same question. And, I make these decisions very, very carefully, with a great deal of assistance from my team. And we don't enter into these agreements lightly or capriciously or frivolously. We could not prosecute Michael McCarthy, and we would not have been able to hold him accountable without the truthful testimony of Rachelle Bond.
What are your thoughts about her release? That was something you agreed to. Is that justice? Is that something are you glad that she's getting the treatment?
Well, I've never met Rachelle Bond personally myself. David has, obviously Hella has, Kara Hayes, who worked with her closely as our victim witness advocate lead on the case. They have all communicated to me that they believe that Rachelle Bond is sincere in her desire to remain sober and to kick this terrible scourge, this habit, this addiction, I should say, of using opioids. And we're all hopeful. We're all optimistic. And, I've known Attorney Basil for my entire career, and she has also told me how sincere Rachelle Bond is to turn her life around, essentially. She has nobody, and, it's a terrible thing that happened, and she had a role in it clearly in the aftermath of it. But now my hope personally, and the hope of my office and the prosecutors and troopers who worked on the case, is that she is clean and sober now, that she stays clean and sober, and that she's able to lead a productive life as a good citizen of our Commonwealth.
With respect to Rachelle Bond and her sentence, in your view, is that justice?
It is justice. I mean, she served nearly 2 years for her role in this matter. She was publicly held accountable in this courtroom. She has to bear the burden of knowing that she had a role, at least in the aftermath of the murder of her own child. That's something that she will a burden that she will carry with her for the rest of her life. Justice is elusive. It's a difficult concept. We all have to conclude our own view on that. In my view, this sentence, coupled with what she will bear now for the rest of her life, justice has been served. The true killer has been held accountable. All right, thank you all very much for all the attention that you gave to the case. I think Janice is going to speak, so.
Okay. What would you like to know?
Janice,
Can you elaborate on the treatment at all? What she
She will be in an inpatient substance abuse program, and she is very committed to that, and I expect that once she completes an inpatient program, she will be in sort of further step-down programs and, eventually reach a point where I hope she will lead an independent life free of drugs and substance abuse.
How long is the program, Janice?
It ranges, so I'm not going to say, thank
Would it be
you.
like a month?
Oh, more than a month, but I really don't want to provide any more information.
Can you talk about just her support system, her lack of, what does she have now? Where can she go? What's her
She has
support
me. That's mostly what her support system has been. She really doesn't have family. She doesn't have friends. Certainly, people are very hostile towards her. She's actually quite a strong person, and I think that she will create, in the end, her own support system. But right now, she needs the structure of sort of an official support system through programs.
What does she have physically in terms of material objects that she has?
Nothing. She has nothing. We actually, her belongings were eventually taken and put in storage, and then they were sort of foreclosed upon by the storage company. We went to the storage unit. I did pull some things from it for her, but essentially she has nothing.
Is there anything that reminded her of Bella?
There were some things I don't even think she really knows what we have, but yeah, there were some things of Bella's, certainly. Well, actually, the thing that spoke to me the most was that there was a pair of a brand new, shiny, tiny pink boots. And to me, that said a lot about her. This was a woman who had very little money, and yet here were these brand new pink boots for her child because she loved her. So I actually have those in my office.
How would you describe her state of mind in terms of her position now, everything that she's been through, and her own thoughts about her prospects for the future?
She's very relieved. I mean, she's relieved it's over. She certainly is relieved that Michael McCarthy was convicted. That was very important to her. And she was relieved that people believed her. That was also important to her. In terms of her future, she's scared. You all know that she could have walked out of this courtroom, I don't know, about 10 days ago, free and clear, and she didn't want to do that. So she is scared about her future. She has a future without her child. And regardless of what people think about her involvement or not, she grieves the loss of that child every single day.
Janice, was it difficult getting a bed at a treatment facility, basically on who she is?
No, it's just there aren't enough beds and enough treatment facilities, and frankly, it's even harder for women. So it's just difficult. There aren't enough beds.
What had nothing to do with who she is and what?
That's all I can say about it.
It was something that was in the record that was reported about her name being a problem.
Well, all I want to say is she's in a good program. She's in a program, and I'm just going to leave it at that.
Can you understand you don't want to say where it is? Can you say if it's in state or out of
I'm
state?
not going to answer any questions about where she's going. I'm not. So.
Is she nervous about walking out? Like, she's going to be out in public in a few days. Like, what's her state of mind?
Well, she will be in a program, so I don't think she's going to be walking out in public for a period of time anyway.
But there'll be other folks, like, she's not in like a
Yes.
solitary.
Right.
Right?
Yes, of course she's nervous. Of course she's worried about it. She was someone who led a very private life until all of this became, unfortunately, front page news. So yeah, of course she's worried about that. What I have found is when people get to know her, though, and they get to know who she is, that sort of dissipates, and the anger about her and the anger about what happened starts to dissipate once they get to know who she is and what she's like.
Is she concerned about a little initial hostility like she experienced at South Bay?
Sure. But it's been my experience, and it was particularly true at South Bay, that once people got to see who she really was, that really dissipated. So.
What pays for the rehab?
I believe that, I'm not entirely clear about that. I believe that, I really don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. But she certainly has no health insurance. She certainly has no job, so.
She was a DMH client, right?
She was a DMH client, yeah. And she also received disability.
Janice, perhaps it's too early because
Yeah.
she hasn't even gone to the facility. What's the long term? I mean, is she going to stay in Massachusetts? Have you had conversations? Will she stay here? Will she go elsewhere?
I mean, she's likely to stay here. I think that she'd like to avoid locations where she was able to connect for drugs. I think she really wants a fresh start. So there are plenty of places in Massachusetts where she could do that.
She does have family. Is there any talk that she will try to reconnect with them? She has a sister, she has a mom, and she does have children.
Well-
Or is there any, do you think there'll be any attempt, does she have any desire to try to reconnect? It's been a long time, but.
Well, her children were taken from her. So to the extent that they decide they want to reach out, that's a wholly different story, but she certainly would not impose herself on anyone. And in terms of her mother, no. In terms of her sister, perhaps. Perhaps.
Has she ever expressed any desire to start over again with a family?
She just wants to start over. I don't think she's thinking much beyond that. It really is kind of a day-to-day thing.
Is it correct to describe her with her mother and her family that she has as estranged?
I don't think she's really estranged from her sister. I would say she's estranged from her mother.
So she walks out of that jail with literally nothing in her hands?
Well, she has a bag from Target filled with things, but other than that, yeah, she has very little.
Just sort of personal lady things?
Yeah, yeah. So she really has, and the clothes she came in with, so that's really about it.
That bag from Target you talked about, that's something you did?
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
It's not a big deal, I mean, she needed things, I got them for her. And I hope she can use them, so.
The pink boots they come from the little trunk of things that she...
Yeah, we went to the storage unit before it was auctioned off, and we pulled some things for her, what we were able to some things for her.
It's one of the few little items that she has in this one.
Yeah, it's in a box in my office, so, yeah. And that's it.
Thank you.